Okay, we're live. We have about 1 minute before we're officially going to get started. But if you meant to tune into the Nonprofit Coffee Talk today, you are in the right place. And Amanda and I are going to get started in just a minute. We'll start right at 11:30, and so a few more seconds. Hope you're having a good day. The sun is shining here today. Is it shining up there for you today? It's
Yeah,
nice.
I think it's
It's
gonna
supposed to
be
be
like
70 today in Columbus, Ohio.
I was gonna say it's gonna be 65.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah.
That's wild, isn't it? February 23rd and 70 degrees and sunny. I mean, I'm not complaining, but it's a little weird. So,
The days I go in with a sweater and leave without it.
right. All right, it's 11:30. I say we get started because we have a lot to talk about as we do every week. So, welcome everyone and thank you for tuning in. Always appreciate your time and value it. So, we hope you find the session today helpful. I'm really excited to have Amanda Kostura, founder and president, clinical social worker with Carve Your Own Path. Oh, I need to take a breath. Um, and Amanda's here with us today to talk about the importance of authenticity, connection, and a holistic approach to wellness and self care, which I am here for. I have a lot of room to learn. So I always ask my guests ahead of time what idea that they're going to bring to this conversation. And Amanda said, rest is productive, and we need to care for ourselves as helping professionals. That is the truth. Burnout among nonprofit and social good folks is so high. It's really important for organizations to understand how important rest is and self care for their employees, and how do you make that happen and how do you make that a priority in your organization? So I'm really looking forward to talking with you, Amanda, about that.
I'm so excited.
Yay. Amanda is a licensed independent social worker supervisor with over 12 years of experience in both direct practice and administrative positions in nonprofits and social service agencies. Amanda noticed that there were missing elements of compassion, humanity, and healing, um, which are the root causes of mental health conditions, when she was working in those positions. And those professional experiences, along with her own personal challenges and research on trauma and the stress disease connection, led her to found Carve Your Own Path, Inc., a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization specializing in a holistic mind body approach for healing and optimal wellness. And we met a couple months ago and instantly had so much in common that we decided we should do some stuff together. So we're going to talk more about what we're doing together in this discussion today, and I'm excited about that too. And I'm Libby V, a champion of nonprofit folks and founder of Libby V and Associates. Through visioning and strategy work, leadership coaching, development support, and organizational and board development, our nonprofit leader clients successfully raise more money and have more impact. But not all nonprofits can afford to hire a consultant. So I created this, the Nonprofit Coffee Talk, as a way to provide great content, helpful information, and wonderful guests like Amanda to as many nonprofit people as I can. I hope you find it useful. Always feel free to suggest to me other topics that you'd like to hear discussed, or guests that you'd like to see, or volunteer to be a guest yourself, and ask questions today. So you can put them right into the chat wherever you are on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. You should be able to ask questions, and we will answer them. So, with that, I'm going to put out the first topic here is, um, Amanda, why'd you leave working for others in organizations to start your own? What was the catalyst for that?
Oh, a lot of things coming together in culmination. I think for most of us that go into the helping professions in any way, do it because we have a bleeding heart, right? We really are compassionate. We want to serve. We want to support others. We want to help others heal. We want to help them see in themselves what we see in them. And I think in my own experience and then my peers around me, and once I moved up into supervision, hearing those stories from people I was supervising, slowly but surely the mechanisms that are our current systems and the way that we function in most of those organizations is very productivity based, like a lot of society. Um, and there's little room for individual differences. There's little room for taking care of yourself. There's little room for innovation and unique ideas and perspectives on how we might tackle these problems or help treat these folks. And so, from my experience, I saw a lot of cookie cutter approaches. I saw a lot of, just pushing people through, right, to get the outcomes, to get the billing, to, be able to build for those services. And every time I was having an hour blocked out for supervision with one of my folks, in the beginning, I was really nerdy excited because I love that role. It's one of my favorite. It's one that doesn't feel like work at all to me. Yet when I was in those other systems, the whole meeting was not clinical supervision and let's talk about how we can apply some interventions to best serve your clients, which in my opinion is what we're there for. It was, hey, you didn't meet productivity last week.
Yeah.
What are we going to do to fix that? How can we resolve it? What's getting in the way? How can you, right? And it felt like I was constantly telling people what they weren't doing and that they
Mm-hmm.
weren't doing enough when they're already burnout,
Mm-hmm.
and not having space to care about them or the
Yeah.
individual clients.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so pressured. Like if you're doing that work where insurance is billed, um, uh, it's all about billable time, isn't it? It's all about it. And I get it and I don't like it. So you felt really constrained with what you could and couldn't do. And I'm sure having conversations with your staff around their own wellness couldn't even happen because you were too focused on billable time and the numbers and getting people in and out. Yeah. So what was the final straw? Like was there one final thing where you were like, that's it. I am out of here. I have to do
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to add to that before I will answer that. But even people, even though we had PTO, they wouldn't, well, they couldn't get it approved because they were behind on things, like not approving someone to take time off when they recognize they need it. Ugh, like felt so yucky. And then also people were like, I would be telling people, please go take a break because you're working overtime and doing these things and you have all this time. And they were afraid to because they knew what was going to be there when they came back. So yeah,
Yeah.
just lots of systemic problems. So I was at the point with my physical health and my mental health where I have a chronic health condition and it was flaring constantly. I had FMLA and I was maxing out all that time that was allowed to take some time off.
Mhm.
And I was just regretting, like, just not wanting to go to work in the morning. I was having really scary mental health related thoughts that weren't normal for me or weren't typical for me. And they were very active and very constant. And one day I came home and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to make it. Like one way or the other, I'm not going to make it here much longer. And the next morning, I sat down at my desk and I describe it as being like I had a knowing just come over me that, like,
Mhm.
this is it. Either we
Mhm.
leave now or like this is a decision that has to be made. And we don't know
Mhm.
what the future looks like. I've never in my life left a job or put a notice in without having another job. That's
Yeah.
not, something I typically do. But I put in a 30-day notice without having anything else lined up for the first time
Mhm.
ever in my life. And the moment I clicked send on that email, I just felt the biggest weight lifted.
Yeah.
And from there on, I just started advocating for myself and not being willing to, uh, I don't know, falter or minimize myself for anybody else.
Yeah.
And it was right.
So strong. It's excuse me. Um, you know, good for you first of all, like putting yourself first and recognizing um it's it's such a hard field, right? Like the helping field and I imagine that working with people and being a counselor or therapist with with people all day with mental health issues is especially difficult.
Mhm.
And if you're if you're an empath, or it's even harder, right? Because you kind of take on people's difficulties, as you're doing your work. And so I'm sure the burnout rate is even higher. And I feel like in that field, there needs to be more healing time and more time off. And it's all the things, right? It's this perfect storm of burnout and mental health challenges in the helpers themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it takes away from what we're all there for,
Yeah.
and I saw it, and so then when people do realize, "Oh, we should be doing more for our staff," it ends up being in these one-off
Yeah.
things like, "Oh, your EAP sends out a monthly newsletter about the services, or they do a webinar once a month on your wellness, or we have a staff retreat day all day," that now people are like, "Oh, great. Now my clients' needs aren't getting met. And
Right.
work is piling
Right.
up. I don't want to be here because there's no morale or no camaraderie between us outside of this. It's a show. It's not genuine, and it reminds me of when people say they're trauma informed or their organization is trauma informed, and what they really mean is that they have their clinical staff trained on trauma,
Yeah.
the organization's administrative people and their policies and all of those other things that
Are
should
not trauma informed.
correct, right. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we care about our employees' wellness, but it's really just these one-off pizza parties, and it's not
Yeah.
not woven into the culture.
And it doesn't do anything about the causes. It's not addressing the causes,
Mhm.
like of how did we get here to the point
Yep.
where we have, yeah.
Yep.
It's like a lot of things trying to put a band-aid on something that really needs, like the system has to change. The system has to change, or this is just going to perpetuate,
Right.
which is sad. So you left. Good for you. And what you did, though, what you've done is find a way to help in this space in a very proactive, positive way. So talk about Carve Your Own Path, and what was the inspiration, and what do you do, and how do you help? I love it. It's so
Yeah.
good.
So I think oftentimes people get stuck in this like fixed mindset that the system is the problem and there's nothing we can do until, kind of like what we just said, which is absolutely true. Like, there are so many strengths because the bigger bureaucracy of it, our capitalistic society functions in that way, and we're not powerless. I will say I am very privileged to the fact that I could just quit my job because I had another income in our household to handle things in case I didn't, right? Not everybody, I'm very aware, many people in this industry are working while also receiving services that their clients are, right? Like, there was people working alongside me, not even making enough of a livable wage to not have to go to the food pantry or get childcare
Yeah.
assistance or those things, right? So I just want to point out that I am aware that my privilege is there in being able to take that leap. So yeah, within that year that I quit, and I started another job. It was a 40-hour position advertised. I had just founded Carve Your Own Path, like just filed the paperwork, right? I was like, I
Okay.
can do this different. Not every nonprofit has to be toxic. I had a dream of having a holistic wellness center in my brain my whole life, and it just seemed like time. So I incorporated as I'm working on looking for another job, and I negotiated and I said, hey, I know you want this 40 hours, but I'm trying to grow this on the side. Can I do 24? And I'm thinking they're going to laugh in my face. Like, who is this person? Why did you even, apply or interview? And she said, let me talk to HR. And so then they came back and they said, we can't do 24, but we can offer 32. And I said, sure, I'll take off on Fridays. And that's where I did. I just started building it from working 4 days a week for someone else and 1 day a week for myself, and, evenings and all that. And slowly but surely worked down to 12 hours, I think, like 2 days, 6-hour shifts working for somebody else. And finally, February 21, I was pregnant. My son was due in August, and I was like, okay, like, I got to grow the Carve Your Own Path. I'm about to have a child. I can't be juggling all those things. And I finally
Yeah.
stepped away. We have since grown from me, just offering clinical supervision services and having a small therapy caseload, to now having a whole office suite. I have 2 employees.
Nice.
we very much focus on that preventative holistic approach where the
Yeah.
things that you're not taught in school, right? Like emotional regulation,
Mm-hmm.
how to regulate your nervous system and prevent that stress disease connection. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're out here to share that with the world and do very individualized, diversity celebrating, identity affirming treatment that isn't cookie cutter, that isn't
Mm-hmm.
cognitive behavioral therapy, talking to people with significant complex trauma, right? Really getting to the root cause, helping
Mm-hmm.
people heal.
So, all that is so wonderful. It's great what you're doing. Such a good service. Are you only working with individuals one on one, or do other kinds of things where it's either working with organizations to try to help them, or I know that you're providing some sort of group educational and workshop stuff that I want to dig into, but tell us, all about how you offer your services and what.
Sure. So we have clinical one-on-one services. We have art therapy. We have traditional talk therapy, but if you like a little spice and you want to try something unique, we have art therapy. We have embodied therapy, which is some principles of yoga, breath work, mindfulness incorporated in talk therapy. We have group yoga classes. That's very restorative. It's not like a hot power yoga. It's very healing and meditative. We have Reiki services to help on the energetic level as well. And then, yes, so we do that individual, and some of those things are group. And then we also present a lot. So professionally, we'll do continuing education trainings for other licensed mental health professionals, speaking engagements, conferences, organizations or businesses that really want to help their employee wellness or give their employees those crucial skills that they need. Because as a lot of people don't know, and this is where I'll nerd off, is when your stress response back here is on, right? Like, it could be something as simple, and I don't mean like demean it simple, but like you're nervous about a meeting with your boss, that can turn on your stress response. And when your stress
Hmm.
response is on, this logical thinking, memory storing, concentrating, all of those wonderful executive functionings in this part of your brain are offline.
Yeah,
So I try to tell people, even if you have a business that doesn't deal with mental health, you deal with mental health, right? Our
absolutely.
nervous system being dysregulated is going to impact your business in any way, right? If
Hmm.
your representatives, your employees are stressed out and not able to regulate, they might make mistakes that can cost you
Hmm.
money. They might do maybe unethical things or cross boundaries, right? Because they're just not thinking clearly and they're not
Yeah.
regulated. So we're happy to provide that for anyone. We also have a podcast called Grow Your Path to Wellness, where we focused on all of those dimensions of wellness, your environmental wellness, your spiritual wellness, your mental wellness, physical wellness, all of those things coming together. And
Say the
we
name of your podcast again, because I think it's worth repeating.
Yeah, it's called Grow Your Path to Wellness. It's available on YouTube and then all your favorite podcast streaming platforms. And I can drop the link in the chat too if
Great.
you
That
can
would
see
be
it.
wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we do that. And then also recently we have started collaborating with other like-minded humans in these spaces to just offer more free educational content on this information to make it more accessible, kind of like you said. So our podcast is there. We're doing a wellness panel speaker series on those dimensions of wellness. So LibEV has been supportive in that for us and getting us some great panelists to be on those panels. So definitely check out, there's a link in the chat there, the book online
Mhm.
link. You can see all of our upcoming community events and be able to see what's there and register for those. We offer a lot of wellness services as well. So like our art therapists will use some of those therapeutic interventions and make them more accessible for the community to just have more creative, mindful, craft type engagement wellness programs.
Mhm. So I want to shift just a little bit because I work with a lot of nonprofit leaders, and nonprofit staff in general are just overworked, underpaid. You know, benefits are sometimes not real great because of the way that we support and finance nonprofits in our country. There's a lot of burnout. Like the burnout rate is high, 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 high. What what would you recommend to people who, are working in a nonprofit or a social good organization and or any job really that needs to start taking care of themselves better? And I love your comment about rest. Rest is it's restorative. It's it's necessary. It's, but what would you tell people? What would be your advice to them about how to get better at taking care of themselves?
Oh, it's so hard to put it in like one
I
succinct.
know it is.
So I present and I train on this for like hours. So it's
Yeah.
interesting. I did like a 10-minute teach on self-care, and I felt like I was rushing through because there's so much to say. In general, I think people typically feel selfish. They feel like it's gonna take away from their productivity. And they don't prioritize that it's necessary compared to other things that might give them a result that they can readily see. So I remind people that even the fastest car on the racetrack, I'm not a NASCAR fan, but I feel like it resonates with anyone, right? Like those cars go really fast
Yeah.
and do a lot of work and have a lot of things kind of, taking their body, right? Yeah, even the fastest car on the racetrack has to take pit stops. It's part of the process, right? So we can't say that rest is laziness or unproductive or a waste of time or not worth prioritizing, because it is literally part of our biological process. When we don't rest, our body doesn't have the capability to heal and mend and restore in all of those ways it was built to. And then we wonder why we're, can't sleep at night, and we have chronic, tension headaches, and all these little things that you are like, oh yeah, I just got a headache, or oh, I must not have slept right last night, or right, those then eventually add up. And what I saw in my own experience, what the research shows, is that becomes what's called the stress disease connection.
Yeah.
We ignore that we need to sit down, we ignore that we need to rest for so long that our body finally says, I'm going to sit you down.
Hmm.
I'm going to sit you down because you won't sit down, right? And so then that might look like a chronic health condition. It might be
Yeah.
chronic pain, like it was for me. It might be a diabetes or a cancer diagnosis, right? And it really escalates for people until they get that picture of, oh, I need to slow down.
Yeah. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe like cardiovascular stuff is sort of the number one kind of side effect of chronic stress
Mm-hmm.
in your life. Um, and I often tell my clients when I'm coaching, them when there's it's like just stop activity, just stop. You've got to stop and just sit. Just stop and sit for like 5 minutes. Just sit,
Yep.
because it's just you get revved up and you just keep running, 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 running. It's like you can't do that. Your body and your brain aren't wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
typically tell people like our modern society has advanced significantly, and yet we forget how primal we are.
yeah,
We're still very primal beings.
yeah.
And the biggest thing with your stress response is that it's like when your stress response is firing and that system in your body is online,
Hmm.
it's depleting energy from your other systems. Your immune system, why do you think you're sick all the time? Your
Yeah,
cardiovascular system, right? Like why you're not having blood pumping the right way. Your digestive system, people, oh, my stomach's bothering me. I'm not sure why, right? All of those things are because you're stressed and your body is pulling energy from every other system, making them not function as well.
yeah. Yeah, your body just is pumping out, and adrenaline and putting you into a panic state,
Mm-hmm.
a fight and right? And you just can't keep continuing to be bombarded with those chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
So bad for us. Um, so what else? Tell us more about the wellness series. I think that is something that could you dig in a little bit? I love how you've structured it around the 8 components of wellness, and I wonder if you want to or talk about anything you want to talk about. But that one I think is would be of interest to people.
Yeah, I was Googling real quick to see if I could find the 8 dimensions real quick to share with people. But
I'll do it.
yeah,
I'll look for it. You keep
awesome. Thank
talking.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we practice a lot from the 8 dimensions of wellness, both in our practice, our clinical practice, our wellness practice. When we present, a lot of it comes from that. And we also use that as a catalyst for our podcast and who we bring on. So it's a circle of circles. I should have been prepared to have it with me to show you,
It's
but
okay.
it
I'm grabbing
has
it.
8 different categories, right? So people think wellness and they think health, physical health, maybe mental health, right? People don't realize that your wellness and your self-care is revolving around a lot of other dimensions too. Your spiritual wellness, that doesn't have to mean religion, that just means how you connect to things around you and meaning that you derive out of the life you
Mhm.
have. Your environmental wellness, both like, yes, do you recycle and take care of your environment, but also what does your workspace look like? What is your home like? What is the city that you live in? How is that conducive or not to your health? Social wellness, what kind of relationships do you have? Are they meaningful to you? Are they pulling from you because you're always giving yourself, right, if they're not reciprocal?
Mhm.
Financial wellness, do you have enough money to make ends meet? Are you paying your bills on time? Are you able to invest? Occupational wellness, which we touched on, like, how does it feel to go to work? Are you supported in that environment? Does it align with your values and your beliefs? Is the work you're doing align in those areas? Mental wellness, obviously, how's your mental health? Do you need support in any way? Physical health, are you getting your regular checkups? How are you functioning? Are you taking care of your body and moving? Oh, I usually can figure them all out.
I've got them in front of me. Do you want me to say them?
Yeah, was there
Let's see.
yeah,
Social, spiritual, intellectual, environmental, and financial.
intellectual, I think, is the one that I missed. So intellectual is like, do you get to read the books that you enjoy reading or learn about things that you enjoy, or do you have good intellectual conversations with people about topics that really resonate with you? And when I teach this, I teach self-care from that, right? Let's mindfully look at this chart, this circle of circles, and just gauge where you're at. Where are you at in each one? And like, if you were living your best life in that area, what would it look like? Not that we're going to try to reach that perfect goal all the time, but to have a mindful tool to look at and say,
Mhm.
I'm feeling really off this week. Oh, you know what? I haven't really meaningfully connected with anyone in like a month. I've
Yeah.
just been on Zoom calls a lot. Oh, yeah. I've been really stressed about finances lately. That would make sense. Right. And so it gives you grace and compassion and understanding. And then you can also make adjustments from there.
Mhm.
And I try to tell people, don't get overwhelmed thinking, oh, great, now I have to make something up for each 8 areas of
Right.
wellness, right? Because that's
Yeah.
a whole other task. When
Yeah.
I teach it, I usually teach, for example, I had a client that started kayaking and I nerded out and got so excited. And they were probably looking at me like, what? But I was like, do you know you have mental wellness because it's really good meditative, right? You have social wellness because you're doing this with other people. It's environmental wellness because you're out there in nature getting all the benefits from that. Like, I was just like listing off all of the areas they were hitting with one activity. So I don't want people to get overwhelmed thinking, oh, great, like I didn't think I could take care of myself to begin with, and now look at what I'm going to have to do. If you're intentional, one thing can help fill in all those
Mhm.
areas.
That's such a great point too, because for those of us who probably are sort of, I'll use that old term of type A personality, right? And we're overachievers and we're like doing all the things, adding more things to our plate seems overwhelming. But I love the idea of just like, what do you like to do? What do you
Mhm.
enjoy? Let's see how many of those things it hits and do those things.
Yeah.
Um, I often think that people that are real stressed will sometimes isolate,
Yep.
as kind of because they don't have the energies. If they're introverted a little bit, they don't have the energy to interact with people. I wonder if you can just kind of, I know it's a huge topic and, we have like 1 minute left or two, but
I actually am
anything.
really glad you pointed that out because research shows that isolation, lack of meaningful social connections, more than unhealthy diet, more than smoking, more than lack of exercise, contribute
Wow.
to reducing the longevity of our lives more in a more impactful way than any of those things. So our brains are very tricky, and when you get in those states, sometimes they can convince you, oh, it's embarrassing, don't tell people, keep it a secret. But mental health concerns, substance use, unhelpful coping skills breed in isolation. Breed, right? Your brain is going to convince you that these things are necessary for survival. So it is so important to have a strong group of people that you feel connected to. Even one person is better than nothing.
Yeah, that's so important. And so if you had to sort of prioritize, is there one of these that you think is the right place to start or is more important? I know there's not one that's more important, but what would you say might be the first place to start if there's any one of those 8 dimensions that? It's a weird question, I know.
I don't know. I usually have people look at the whole picture and kind of jot
Mhm.
down some things that they are already doing in those areas, or that they used to,
Mm,
or they'd like to be doing, right?
yeah.
And then kind of take the prioritizing from there. So people
That's so
might,
good. Yeah.
yeah, like people might be doing really great with their social
Yeah.
wellness, right? They found
Yeah.
that, but it's their occupational wellness that's struggling because they don't feel like their job is a good fit, but they can't just up and leave, and
Yeah.
all of those things. So, or they might see, oh, my job being really stressful is now flowing into my social relationships and my family and my, and so
Mhm.
that whatever one is kind of having more detrimental impact might be the one to tackle.
That's smart. Yeah, you're right. That was kind of a weird question,
It's okay. I
but I
understand.
like that. So, do you I put the link in for Sam's 8 Dimensions of Wellness.
Yeah.
So, in order to sort of assess where people are, do you recommend they go to that? Because it does describe it pretty well, that link I put in there,
Yeah.
and sort of take an assessment of where they are. Like, what am I doing well, and where am I really struggling, and
Yeah.
how can I kind of improve in those areas? So,
Yeah.
this
That's
is
a really
great.
good place to start. And then I've kind of taken that and and put it on a whole other level with the training and
Yes.
things I do, to help make it a more individualized approach.
Yeah.
People can leave with a true individualized self-care plan.
That's great. Good. The workshops would be a good place to start too, to really dig
Absolutely.
into those.
Yeah.
So check all those links out. There's some good resources in there, everybody. And with that, we're done. It always goes by and really quickly. So thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful that we met and that we're connected. I love what you're doing, and I'm glad to be a part of just a little bit of it. So hey, listen, tune in next week. We're going to have another really great speaker and a good topic. And I think you'll enjoy it. And in the meantime, have a good week. And Amanda, I always invite my guests to come back anytime, dig in a little bit more, or pick a different topic. So you are invited.
Thank
And
you.
I'm
There's
so
obviously many
grateful.
things to talk about. So
Yes, thank you so much for your
thank
time.
you.
All right, everybody, take care. See you
Yeah.
next week.